All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Live Wire. I am your host, Jared Moore, and on tonight's program, we have Dr. Russell Cobb. He is Associate Professor and Graduate Director of the Department of Modern Languages and Cultural Studies at the University of Alberta, Canada. And we also have Dr. Lindsey Claire Smith. She is the Director of the Center for Poets and Writers at OSU-Tulsa. And we are going to be talking about a collection of essays that will tentatively be published through the University of Oklahoma Press called We Belong to the Land, Dreamers, Outsiders, and Changemakers in Oklahoma. So with that being said, guys, thanks for joining us on the program tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to remind you guys that are out there watching, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat. And there's already a question in there, but I'm going to get to that in a little bit. First off, and whichever one of you guys wants to field this, feel free, or if you both want to jump in. What is the project and what is it about?
I guess I can get started. I can tell you a little bit about how it came together and sort of some of the goals that we want to accomplish. So before the pandemic, in the before times, I had a chat with an editor, an acquisitions editor at OU Press about the possibility of releasing a collection of essays with writers and activists in Oklahoma, sort of as an update to this book, which I have in front of me. It's called An Oklahoma I Had Never Seen Before, which was a book by a historian, Davis D. Joyce, and it was sort of all about this idea of alternative Oklahoma, stories that don't often get shared or told, histories that are missing sometimes from our sort of narrative of ourselves in the state. And so the pandemic happened, and we all kind of did other things, but we reconnected. And so I got in touch with Russ, whose book, The Oklahoma Swindle, I really enjoyed. And we just started talking about how we would want to put this together. And what we really want to do is feature just that idea of alternative Oklahoma and people who are working in community, who are taking action steps to make Oklahoma a better place to live, tell stories that people don't know about and would benefit from knowing. And I think one of the goals we have is to really keep us focused on the future, not just the past as well.
So I noticed too, and we have a link, guys, if you're watching this, there's a link to the submission form, or it's not the form, it's kind of like the sheet, the call for contributions. If you want to go in there, that has a little bit more information in there too, if you want to go over that. But I noticed in there that the date for submissions was November 1st, the deadline, is that right? Is that a hard deadline, or can people still submit?
I think people could story if they want to share and want us to take a look at. We'll take a look at it.
Okay, so that there's a bit.ly link in there, guys. Down at the bottom, it says address for submission, and it's the bit.ly link, and then We Belong abstract. So if you guys still want to try to submit to get in, and kind of, if you could, and maybe Mr. Cobb could handle this, what are you guys looking for from submissions?
Right. Well, I think what we're really looking for are some of these stories that have been left out of the mainstream narrative of the state of Oklahoma. So when other people look at the state of Oklahoma and they go, cowboys, ranchers, brand new state, gonna treat you great, in the words of the musical, The Boomers and the Sooners, what is left out of that? We have such a rich place with so many other stories, peoples that have been either forgotten or deliberately erased, from our state's history. So anyone who can speak to those stories, you have a unique story to tell. I think, people might be a little intimidated when they see the OU Press label, because it is an academic press. But we don't want people to feel intimidated, because what we're really after are storytellers. And people who really know who are rooted in community, are rooted in history, and can speak to a particular kind of story. It doesn't necessarily have to follow all the footnotes and the whatever kind of style guide, But as long as you have that and you can speak to it and you're passionate about it, I think it would make for a nice contribution.
Absolutely. And I should mention to the audience too, our two doctors here, they're going to be the editors for this project. So it's not like you're not going to have any help at all along that process of reforming what you're writing and everything. And I was just going through the call for contributions. You guys are looking for 4,000 to 5,000 words or a whole chapter. Is that like one individual would write a 4,000 to 5,000 word essay? Is that the idea?
We have some of those, but we're open to other ideas as well. There will probably be at least one, if not two, interviews where we talk to people who have such a long, involved history where it'll be kind of more of a back and forth. And so, that there are different forms that we could look at. I mean, we are definitely the things that are kind of non-negotiable are, it has to be truth-based, so it has to be factual. It's nonfiction. And it has to be in some way, shape, or form about the state we call Oklahoma today. Other than that,
Right.
Just pitch us.
And I'm just looking along here. So we mentioned that the November deadline for submissions is kind of a soft deadline. You guys will still look at stuff if they send it into that link. What about the March 1st, 2024 deadline? Is that a hard deadline, or is that something like where you guys are going to work with people that you pick their submissions? What's the situation there?
Well, we all need a deadline, right?
Yeah.
So I would say we really need to have everyone aiming to have their complete draft by March 1st. But as is the case when one writes a book, it's hard to see the end point in some ways because there's so much revision, so many notes. So it's not as if, the draft comes in and all contact ceases.
Right.
But we really need people to have, their full thing fleshed out. And so between now and then, we are working with our contributors. We have a couple of things coming up in the new year. One is going to be an open mic night in January, part of their project as kind of a first step. And then in February, we'll likely be doing some kind of workshop with our contributors to give them a chance to share and get feedback from other folks who are contributing as well as the editors.
I see.
So yeah, it will be a process, but there's a time when it has to come in. So
right. And on that open mic night, I think our connection dropped out a little bit. Where is that going to be?
That's going to be at Heirloom Rustic Ales on January 25th.
Okay, awesome. So the other question I had is, you guys are the editors. Are you also going to be contributing essays to this, or are you guys strictly going to be in the editor role?
Well, I've got enough going on. I'm just looking forward to seeing what other people have to say and sitting back for a little bit and taking it all in. I don't know about Lindsey.
Yes, I am working on another book as well. so I am not planning on contributing an essay. And honestly, part of it is because we're really wanting to encourage non-academics. I mean, we do have a couple of academics who are contributing pieces, but those folks honestly are earlier career than we are. And so I anticipate that we'll, provide an introduction, and we'll probably include some notes to introduce our sections, but I'm not planning to submit an essay myself. So I want to hear some, as Russ said, I want to hear from some other people, honestly.
I gotcha. Well, we've had a couple of questions. They're kind of messing around questions, but I'm going to ask them anyway. And I want to remind you guys in the audience, if you have a question, pop it into the chat. The first one, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but T.Y. Pearl's asking, are there any Angie Debo books still in print? Do you guys, Angie Debo, are you guys fans, or do you know of books that are still in print by her?
Yeah, OSU has her papers, and you can come to the library and sit in her desk.
Awesome.
Yes.
Do that? Wow. Yeah. There's now there why am I blanking on her magnus opus? And Still the Waters Run. Thank you.
Yes.
And Still the Waters Run. The Betrayal of the Five Civilized Tribes it was reissued recently, by the University of Oklahoma Press with Amanda Cobb Greetham, who's one former director of Native Studies there at OU, and that's still very much in the conversation. I feel like that book is more poignant than ever right now. I will say though that like a book that is out of print that needs to come back into print is her history. It's a very short little history of Tulsa, because it gives some of the Mvskoke foundation of Tulsa in a way that really had kind of got left off as you get the oil capital and all the celebration of all that. You get the roots, right? The Mvskoke roots and the tribal town, Logoboja tribal town. She does a lot of good stuff with that.
Absolutely.
And that and that came out in like 1940 something. And I was lucky enough to pick up a out of print version, but if someone ever wants to bring that back into print, I'm supportive.
T.Y. Pearl says her whole catalog needs to be brought back. His next question, and this is coming from T.Y. Pearl again, is who killed Karen Silkwood?
Wow, T.Y. Pearl. Whoever T.Y. Pearl is getting all those getting my Oklahoma like
yeah.
Because,
So
who killed Karen Silkwood? None dare say the name Kerr. Lindsey, who killed Karen Silkwood?
I don't know, but if somebody wants to,
Lindsay's dropping out a little bit there.
Out.
I think she was going to say if somebody wants to submit an essay on it, there you guys are interested in looking at that, right? Is that
yeah?
That,
as long as we're not receiving money from a certain well-known.
Oh well, there's that.
Well, T.Y. Pearl's on the money again here. He's got another question. The extraction industry, and this is his phrasing, Oklahomistan, seems to be shifting towards greener minerals and refining. But is the industry really changing? And whoever wants to field that, Dr. Cobb, if you want to go first. I assume he's referring to the lithium plants.
Started with a softball, nice little warm up about Angie DeBello.
I know.
Yeah.
And now we're getting into greenwashing the entire petrochemical.
This is. I don't really do any of the interviewing. It's the chat that does it. That's the program. But go ahead. Yeah. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, the price per barrel of oil is still set every single day in Cushing, Oklahoma, as far as I know, and they're still connecting pipelines there. So when we talk about all this sort of, the greening and a lot of these things, I wonder, the big money is still in the oil business as we know it, as far as I know. But I'm willing to be told otherwise.
Well, I personally concur with that too. Ms. Smith, do you have an opinion on it? Dr. Smith, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I mean, I at this point just don't see infrastructure for green technology that would support widespread adoption of climate-friendly practices. That's my statement.
Yeah. And I would throw in this is just my 2 cents on this particular issue is that, there was, and I don't remember, I'll try to dig this out on YouTube, and if I can get it to you, TY, I will. There was a documentary I watched on YouTube about a battery plant that was opened in a small town in Oklahoma in the 70s. And the documentary was about, or maybe it was a power plant. I can't remember. Anyway, the whole thing was about how the community didn't want it there because of the toxic waste and things that was going to be buried and things like that. And so there was a big community push to get that shut down, and the factory or the plant was shut down eventually, right? And it was a long documentary. But one of the things that I would compare to, if we're comparing the oil industry with, like, for instance, and I'm assuming you're referring to the lithium refinement industry, right? there's already a structure, a bureaucratic structure for the waste materials of the oil industry to be kind of, brushed under the rug. If you saw on the web or in the newspaper, our story that we published about the Superfund sites in the state. So see, the oil industry already has that mechanism to where they can say, hey, we're just going to go in here and we're going to make this situation and then we're going to go somewhere else. And this guy, this landowner or whoever's going to have to deal with that problem if it turns into one in the future. And I don't see that bureaucratic structure for that type of waste management for the lithium or any of the green energy, so-called green energy projects that are coming into the state or at the federal level, because that's a federal thing. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think if we saw that, we would see more of these projects and vice versa.
That's a good point.
I mean, even just having an electric car, it's really, I don't have one, but I mean, I think I'm interested in one, but there aren't charging stations. Like,
Yeah. And there are, it's a topic we should probably, we'll do a program on it at some point, DUI, but the changes that happened with McGirt are all on the criminal side, but there are many people that say there's no way that you can impact the criminal and not have it impact the civil. And how does the McGirt decision, once we see some of these, if we see some of these legal civil changes happen, like taxes, etc., or like the situation in Tulsa with Hooper, if we see some of those things change on a civil side, is it going to affect oil leases? Under which court structure were these leases established? Would be an interesting thing to look into, because it wouldn't be too hard. And it would that have an opening for green industries to come in and operate with the tribal governments as opposed to the state governments and so on and so forth? How many tribes have some type of regulatory schemata already in place legally in their laws that offer things that the state of Oklahoma don't, or the federal government maybe doesn't or can't? Oh, we've had a question pop up. Oh, go ahead.
I'm just really excited to hear you say that, because it's such an interesting question that I think is going, and I can see it, in some of the research I've done, just how the layers of ownership between county, between the federal government, and between the tribes, it was contested from the very beginning. It was never resolved. Never resolved.
Yeah.
And so now, in light of this, McGirt, I feel like it's just a matter of time till we start opening that up in the context of like this, post carbon future or whatever we're supposedly going to have someday.
Well, we've had T.Y. Pearls post a couple of questions here. This first one is, does Inhofe's Midnight Rider on restricting tribal environmental regulation play into all of this? That's a deep cut on Oklahoma legislation, but I'm going to toss it to you guys and see if you're familiar with Inhofe's Midnight Rider, because I'd have to go look it up to quote it myself. But Dr. Cobb or Dr. Smith?
T.Y. Pearl got me there, Lindsey.
All right, I would have to do some research on that. I've heard that before, but I'm not sure what his Midnight Rider was. And T.Y., if you want to post that in the chat, we can all read it and maybe give our opinions on it. But opinions. His next question. Well, no, he's just making a statement. All part of the plan, but the playbook remains the same, it seems. So. Is there anything about this project, guys, that you think is very important that we haven't mentioned? To shift gears, sorry, it's kind of like we're flip-flopping back into the.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'll say the thing that got me really excited about working with Lindsey on this is that it's not just history. So I mean, I'm really passionate about Oklahoma history myself, but I think that the idea that we can look to people not simply as a way to just go, well, that's that the past is the past and we're moving forward, but rather to see how the past informs where we are. So, for example, we have a we have a few educators that are going to be contributing, and I think that the point of view of educators is really fascinating, because if you look at the origins of the Oklahoma Constitution, it has all these clauses about free from sectarian control, yes, about how it's free public education is available for every citizen, and at the time that seemed pretty progressive or even radical. Mm-hmm. At the time. Now now people go, oh, Oklahoma, it's such a conservative state,
right,
that superintendent we won't even talk about right now, blah 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 blah. and I think to have the prospective educators to say, hey, no, what we're doing is not quote unquote woke or mm-hmm. or even race theory. What it is kind of honoring the past legacy where we envisioned something that would be better, that would be guaranteed, that would sort of honor the words they would not just be empty words, right? That they'd be we'd fulfillment of that promise.
T.Y. Proles posted a question in here, and his question is: are Curtis Act town sites pure BS post statehood? And I do want to toss that to you, Dr. Cobb, Dr. Smith. We saw and I know I don't know. Are you guys familiar with the Hooper case and everything in that Tulsa municipal case? What's your opinion about that? Because we've seen the upper court ruling kick it back down, and now they're going to have to rehear the case without the Curtis Act. What about towns that are on the reservation utilizing the Curtis Act as their legal justification for municipal tickets? What's your opinion?
Ooh, I'm going to have to think through that one for a second. I'm going to have to think about that one for a second, because I think
while you guys are thinking, I'm going to give the audience, for somebody, if you guys are watching this, you have no idea what I'm talking about. The Curtis Act was an act of Congress that was passed before Oklahoma statehood had happened, with the ostensive idea that there were townships that were going to be established in what was Oklahoma at times the Indian Territory, and those townships needed some way to write laws and write municipal tickets and things like that in order to be a town. And so they passed the Curtis Act, and the court's ruling that happened recently basically said that because the Curtis Act explicitly refers to the laws of Arkansas, because at the time that was the closest state to that territory, that the city of Tulsa couldn't use that as justification for their municipal ticket writing, because after Oklahoma's statehood happened, they need to come up with some other justification. So that's the nutshell of that case. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, thanks for the background on that, because
it's something we've been covering,
because it's like I've been thinking a lot about like something that's attached to that of the Dawes Act the Curtis Act. With the Curtis Act and the formation of these like the platting of towns, mm-hmm. I would love to see somebody write about this, maybe for a certain volume.
Yeah, that's what TY is posting in there right now. He says the contemporary question of what becomes the most unallotted Curtis Act town sites post McGirt would make a good essay. So, but go ahead, Dr. Cobb.
It sure would. Well, I think T.Y. Pearl should pitch that to us, because it's a confounding story that has been completely left out. Is the grand jury, two grand juries, federal grand juries that investigated Governor Haskell mm-hmm. for deliberately setting up dummies, dummy accounts mm-hmm. to create these lots within, towns like principally Mvskoke and Tulsa, that were found to be, they were non-existent people that he could turn around and say, oh, they're homesteaders, and then flip those town sites. It's all a big, the short version, it was a big real estate scam.
Yeah.
And if that real estate scam in Tulsa sounds like modern history, well, yeah.
Right? Exactly.
So I think all of these things, so it's like the question of that, of like the Hooper thing, and and what's going on with the Curtis Act and all that, is like so many things, just like, where they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it echoes. It's like we're in that echo right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Smith, did you want to say something there?
I mean, my comment is that, you know, these issues are going to require cooperation and an honest look at the law, and the approach that's being used by some is not that approach. And so that's disappointing. But also, I mean, the hope is that projects like ours can really help inform and amplify these histories and their relevance now.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I would say to the audience too, I don't know if some of you guys are watching, maybe you're watching this after the fact, you're like, I don't care about this. I would say that this is like a very interesting project. Number one, because this stuff is still happening, guys. Like a lot of what we're talking about with Indian Territory or anything, is like in a rearview mirror, but it's still going on and it continues to go on. And you guys, there's still a window to submit to this. So write your pitch, TY, and send it to him. We'll see if you can get in. Do you guys, while I have you here, do you want to name drop anybody that is going to be in the final edition of this? Or is it something where you got to keep mum on it? Is there any big names that maybe you want to say, hey, this person's going to be in there, check this out?
Lindsey?
Well, we don't have it under contract yet.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, okay.
What do you think, Russ?
I understand if you guys can't, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'd hate to promise something that somehow doesn't get delivered, but
right.
let's just say that like I said, there's some names that you're going to want to hear from in
awesome.
Fields of like education, everything from education to spirituality to tribal affairs.
Yes.
People who were involved in a certain, big movie that came out.
Okay. That's what I was looking for. There you go.
All that kind of stuff. You're gonna get like backstories. Yeah. You
guys have definitely piqued their interest. And we've talked about, it's listed on here as tentatively being published through the University of Oklahoma Press. When this gets published, where are you guys going to go with it? Is it going to be into the stores? Will people get it on Amazon? Or is it going to be like a reference book? Where's the final destination for this project? And whoever wants to field it.
I anticipate that we'll be doing book events around town. People can come and meet some of the contributors and get a book signed, and I think that's our plan.
All right, great. Well, guys, you've been two terrific guests. I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight. We are right at our deadline window at 28 minutes. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I do want to give you guys that are watching an update on what's coming up this week. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., we're going to have another live wire. President of the College of Mvskoke Nation, Monty Randall, is going to be coming on, and he's going to be talking about the 8th annual Men's Summit. I know, TY, you sent me that email, and you want Dr. Randall to come on Lawyered Up, which is a different program, and talk about his opinion on the non-sectarian clause in the Oklahoma schools and the Catholic charter school and everything. I'm working with him. I'm going to see if he wants to do that after this program. That's not tomorrow's program. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the 8th annual Men's Summit. So tune in for that and ask your questions there. Gary's show, Ibaniah, is going to have, I believe he's a UFC fighter on the program, 9:30 a.m. on Thursday. So tune in for that. And then I believe it's 2 p.m. on Friday. Gary's going to have a show about AARP scams that are targeting Native American elders. So you want to tune in to check that out. And then I don't have anything scheduled for next week. So we'll have some more good stuff for you guys, though. Again, guys, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching us. And we'll see you next time. Chihichoth, Lees.